Hi, I'm Geraldine Gallagher, and this is our podcast, Shifting the Needle. I'm really excited to have with me today Lesley Sackey. Lesley, welcome to Shifting the Needle.
Thank you.
And can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I am a former GB boxer and gold medalist. I am the founder of Fight Forwards, which is a social enterprise that supports survivors of domestic abuse through boxing. And I am currently on my journey as an early tech startup founding pillar. And I want to say that I'm a mother of 3 girls as well. So that's part of what I do.
I noticed that on your, I think it's your WhatsApp ident. It had mother, inspirator, and what was the other one? There's another
Motivator.
and motivator. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that was nice. So boxing. Tell me a little bit about how you got into boxing.
So it wasn't really conventional. I wasn't groomed from an early age. I hated sports at school. I always had a PE note to get out of PE. And so in my early 20s, I wanted to get fit, but I didn't like the idea of going to the gym. And a family friend suggested a local boxing gym. And I thought I'd give it a go. And, when I walked in, it's an old church with lots of old boxing pictures on the wall. The ring is in the center. It's very atmospheric. In fact, I think you've blessed the doors.
Couple of times.
Yeah, All Stars
Not
Boxing
in the ring.
Gym. Yeah,
not in the ring yet.
but you've been to support and experience our events. So when you walk in, the smell of testosterone hits you. There's a lot of noise and kind of it's sensory overload. But I felt quite at home because I'd grown up with boys as well. I had brothers. So that didn't really faze me too much. But actually it was the training that did. I thought, oh my God, who does this? It was exhausting. But there is something magical about boxing and you do catch a bug. And that's what happened. I felt like this was something that kept me on my toes. It was something that I learned, every single session was something different. And that really held my interest. And I had this coach called Mr. A, who was very much a father figure to me. And he really nurtured me and took me under his wing, kind of like $1 Million Baby, with the happy ending. And he really encouraged me and advocated for me. And so began my journey into the ring.
And it ended up with the gold medal?
Yes, it ended up with a gold medal. So not initially, at first, I lost my first fight. And what I remember was that my shorts were too tight and that I was exhausted. And, having three babies and going through childbirth, I still will never experience exhaustion like my first fight.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it got stopped by the second round because I was so tired. I couldn't respond. It was like an out-of-body experience. My mind was saying, keep your hands up. And it was like my body couldn't respond.
Is it the adrenaline?
It's the adrenaline. I've never experienced anything like it. I didn't, know how to fuel my body. I learned so many lessons from losing that first fight, which then created the foundation for me to go on and win. And so I think I was just so happy to step in the ring. And it wasn't until I started, truly succeeding and doing well, that's when I felt the pressure and understood, pressure is a privilege, but it came with responsibility. The better I got at boxing, the more I kind of worried about doing well. Whereas in the beginning stages, I had nothing to lose. And so it was enjoyable.
And so I think with Fight Forward, tell me a bit about Fight Forward and what inspired Fight Forward.
I think, as my journey through boxing wasn't a conventional one, I really didn't know what I was capable of in terms of sporting achievements. And what boxing gave me was the ability to understand not only who I was as a person under pressure and, in tough environments, but also to understand that there's always more. I think we all have a reservoir of resilience, but I think it's only when we're challenged and put in situations where we can tap into that. And, really understand that there's something available to us to push us forward. So boxing really gave me that gift. And I realized that after my journey, in a short space of time, I achieved a lot. I won a gold medal within 6 years. I represented Team GB. I was on the first ever female Olympic selection and part of a wave of legacy female boxers who even today we're still seeing, Savannah Marshall, Nicola Adams, Natasha Jonas. We were all part of this wave of women that was opening the doors for female boxing. And I felt like I wanted to continue that. I felt it was my personal mission to work with women and use the tools and the knowledge that I'd learned from boxing to give them something that not only just applies in the ring, but outside of that. So I started, working with corporates because, they're very competitive environments. And so I delivered workshops and sessions based around having a champion's mindset with banks, Barclays, Standard Charter. I was working with ITV, Sky, all different types of organizations. I'm delivering these workshops and sessions on how to feel empowered, but behind the scenes, I'm feeling pretty disempowered. And I was in an abusive relationship. And so I felt like my reality wasn't matching. And so I began quite a long journey in terms of detaching from that process and, removing myself from that environment and my children. And I felt like I was surviving, but I wanted to thrive. And so I thought, what can I do in order to do that? And I thought,
You've got
boxing.
3 daughters, haven't you?
I have 3 daughters. So I basically gave up boxing and then made an Olympic sport out of having, kids in a very short space of time. So at one point I had 3 girls under 5. So
God.
Yeah, that's resilience.
And you still were in the relationship at this point?
No, by my third, I'd left the relationship whilst I was pregnant with my third daughter. And so began, a journey of around 7-8 years. And, I only recently learned this term post-separation abuse, which really, I was like, oh my gosh, I really understand what that is, because I think a lot of women maybe not see what's going on in their relationship until they leave. And I think that's an opportunity where things really ramp up. And so I didn't see myself as a woman who'd experienced abuse because, here I am, this champion boxer, gold medalist. How can I experience such a thing? And, I'm confident and I know how to fight back and I have a voice. But it doesn't present itself in that way. It's very nuanced and layered. And it wasn't until I was speaking with other women that I understood that there's many different types of abuse. And actually what I had been experiencing was exactly that. So began my journey. And, just very practical things like, how do you get your ex off your joint bank account, to navigating co-parenting, all these types of things. I felt I was in survival mode and I really wanted to thrive. And so I thought, I'll box. So after a 10-year break, a hip replacement, and 3 babies later, I thought, I'm going to step into the ring.
As you do.
Yeah. And it was to celebrate me turning 40. And the rules in boxing, amateur boxing, is that you can't participate in amateur boxing after your 40th birthday. So I was like, I'm going to have one last fight. I'm going to step into the ring at the very place where I had my first fight, All Stars Boxing Gym. I'll raise a bit of money for the Women's Trust who had supported me in my own journey. But just like anything I do in boxing, it snowballs and leads me somewhere else. And I thought boxing is an amazing tool to, help you connect with your body, your voice, to help you feel empowered. And I thought there's really something there that could be used to support women in similar situations to me. And so Fight Forward was born. And the name of the event was The Fight Back. So it was really about me stepping into the ring to show other women what's possible and that you can triumph over trauma, and also to show my girls what's possible. They were sitting front row, and to see their mum in a position of strength and happiness as well was really important to me. So
it's very empowering, doing something that's got so much purpose, hasn't it? So tell me a little bit more about Fight Forward. Obviously I know about it, but I want you to explain it for the listener, what it actually does.
Okay, so Fight Forward, we use boxing as a tool to support women who are on their post-crisis journey. So I spoke a lot about, coming out of my relationship and understanding there's a whole world to navigate. And although I may not be in immediate danger, it's, really sensitive times and actually dangerous times for women, because that's when their mental health plummets, when they have limited access to resources, and when they feel probably just as, even more isolated in a different way. And so I wanted to provide a space, a community where, like-minded women could get together and know that they're not alone, to connect through movement. And there is something really powerful about boxing, just whether you land a shot on anybody or not, just the training and the process of standing strong in your body is really important for women who have had to be subjected to abuse. It really gives them a sense of foundation and connection to their own bodies, which a lot of the time has been, a big source of disconnect.
Yeah. And one of the things I think is really quite interesting about it is this idea that they have to be at a certain stage of almost recovery to be helped with this program. Is that right? Do you want to just expand on that a little
so
bit?
I think, again, there's lots of services and support out there for women in terms of crisis and kind of getting them to safety. Of course, there can always be more work done. But I think in order for women to participate, certainly in the Fight Back program, which is the 10-week program where we take a group of survivors to step into the ring at the end of it. It's a 10-week, very intentionally designed program that, teaches the boxing basics. But within that, you're learning about connection to your body, shifting emotions that are stuck, that live there. Trauma lives in the body and it's like calcified emotions. So it requires something rigorous to release that, and boxing is a tool for that. And so we provide emotional safety and support to a degree for that to come out and be explored. But there has to be a level of awareness from the participants. Can they be self-aware? Can they take responsibility for their own emotions? Because it is a safe container we're building, and so therefore there has to be you have to be arriving at a level where you're not in the crisis or kind of survival stage of just trying to get through each day. This is where you're like, okay, I'm ready to build. I want to thrive. And how do I do that?
And when I came to the first time I came to the fight night, I was just so struck by how much these women clearly loved each other by the end of this training program. And rather than it being an aggressive evening, they went at it in terms of the boxing. But then I loved the fact that winning wasn't really the objective in a way. I mean, it was for the participants, but I mean, when they lost, they were equally overjoyed as they were when they won.
Yeah.
It didn't seem that winning was the objective at all. It was being there.
It's the process, and it's like it's the journey, not the destination. So the showcase is somewhere for all of that to land, but it's really what's magical and important about that 10-week journey is exactly that, the journey. And what I love about boxing is there's such respect, which is two people can step into the ring and go toe to toe and, go at it. And then at the end of it, have huge respect and give each other a hug and say, that was amazing. And women are, I've noticed in these programs, one person might give the other person like a really good combination or a good jab to the face. I'm like, oh, good jab. Your jab was so lovely. Or, and it's beautiful to see because there's also a separation, right? It's context where you have ownership over what you're doing. You have ownership over throwing the shots. You're consenting to something and both of you are doing that. And there's such mutual care and love and respect in that process. Yeah. That actually that's what we're trying to build on and share in the Fight Forward community. We've got now 40, 50 women strong who really support and show up for each other. One of the former fight backers or alumni, she ran a half marathon at the weekend and a group of women came down to support her. We had a film director whose film was in the cinema. And we all came down to, she got nominated for a Scottish BAFTA and we were all there cheering her on. Lovely. It's really about having a community and a tribe of people to celebrate the wins and also hold you in the challenges as well.
And because I think it's quite important to highlight that the how prevalent violence against women actually is. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's a global crisis. It's at endemic levels. And I think we're so desensitized to that. It's not changing. It's on the increase. It's 1 in 3 women globally at some point in their lifetime will experience abuse. 1 in 4 in the UK. And it's actually probably even more. That's based on reported. So that's around 8 million women, which is a huge amount. And it's one thing to talk about these statistics, but let's bring it into context of the workplace, for example. That's costing companies over 16 billion a year in terms of lost turnover, because of employee absenteeism, high turnover. There's such a ripple effect and an impact. If you have, a team of, 500 employees, and let's say in an ideal world, half of them are women, right?
Yeah.
So, ideal world, we're looking at maybe 60 to 80 of those women potentially dealing with this situation.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. 75% of women report that their perpetrators turn up at work. How are workplaces equipped for that? How do they, protect their employees against that? It's really important to bring it into the real world context. And I think, we've had this kind of same narrative of seeing, kind of these downtrodden women who are, cowering in the corner, these adverts. But it's not the reality of it. I meet CEOs and barristers and women at all different kind of walks of life and, careers, and they're experiencing this or have. And there's no permission or space for them to say this is something I've experienced, because we still have a very specific narrative of around what women in these situations present as.
So what can companies do or individuals do? We sponsor a couple of the boxers, so that's one thing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So companies like yours, like sponsoring women to participate in the actual program itself is amazing. We're looking for brand sponsors to build long-term partnerships along with the event. They're gaining lots of traction, often sold out, and we get great press for that. But also in terms of like looking at your workplace, like the businesses that you're running and like who are you really supporting in these spaces, which is, why we're building Pillow, and we're starting there, which is the platform we're building to help women on their post-crisis journey, but to create it in a way that it's accessible to your employees so that, women are not going to go up to your HR person and say, I'm experiencing this. There's a great deal of shame associated with that. And so how do they get access to resources, which then, helps them stay in the workplace, but also feel supported and seen. And so you can book us for, at the moment, we're creating a wait list for pilot partnerships to test and road test Pillow as we're building.
So Pillow is an online platform of resources that you're talking to different suppliers that, I guess they're not called suppliers, are they participants or?
Yeah. So it's a digital platform with an AI navigation layer. So it will be very bespoke in terms of, your age, where you're living, what your actual circumstances are, and then we'll connect you to the relevant resources, people, tools in order to help you move from that moment of survival into thriving. And so we're just working on our MVP prototype, and then we're wanting to work with a few companies to pilot it and see exactly how important it is. And I think it's positioning ourselves as, this is not a nice to have, this is a must have. This should be accessible to all organizations, because this isn't a problem that affects a small part of the population, unfortunately, and it's only growing. So you can support and sign up in that way, or book us for Fight Forward workshops. So we deliver, workshops around adopting a champion's mindset, how boxing is a tool to transfer within the workplace environment.
Which we did.
Which you did,
yes.
Absolutely. And now you
Marvelous.
have like a team of champions.
And I would advise those listening, when you do, don't wear a silk dress and high heels.
There you go. But you look good doing it.
So you've got these two things, Fight Forward, and you've got, you've been a gold medalist, and you've got Pillow now.
Yeah.
So obviously there's something very entrepreneurial about you. There's something that sparks you. And all of them strike me as being, you mentioned it before, something where you need to have a lot of resilience. Have you got any techniques for when you're feeling down, feeling a bit low, when you're thinking, God, how can I get up and deal with this? Any techniques that you can share?
I think I realized that I I've been entrepreneurial since I was probably a young kid in the playground. My first business was called Strings, and it was a friendship making bracelet business that me and my friends set up. Um, and then from then, I've always, when I reflect on the type of personality I am and the things that I've done, I've always leaned towards the freedom of entrepreneurship, but it's teamed with purpose. And so I say that because the connection when it comes to things that are tough and when I feel overwhelmed by the journey or that the mountain feels huge, it's having a sense of purpose that is being able to kind of keep you going in those times when you're like, I just can't do it today. And I think that's, having an understanding as to why or what you're wanting to create is reassuring. But on those days when it is particularly hard, it's sometimes not enough. And so I think for me, it's just acceptance, which is, if I say boxing is life because every time there's always an example that I can draw from the ring, which is when you're in a fight and you get knocked down. I'm sure you've seen boxing fights and, the ref, you have a count of 8 to get up. And so you've been knocked down and it's a classic thing of, you get knocked down, you get back up again. But actually it's more than that. It's understanding how to get up. So for example, you get knocked down, one response is to jump up straight away and say, I'm okay, right? Look, I'm fine, I can do this. Another approach that we see sometimes boxers do is like they take a minute and they stay down and they breathe and they just, what's happening. And then they're up by 7, standing up by 8. And so there's different approaches to this idea of like, we don't always, just because you've been knocked down, it's not straight, get back up again. It's kind of maybe I need to accept and understand what is happening before I then respond accordingly.
Yeah.
And maybe I need a little bit more energy and a little bit more time in order to do that. And I think that's hugely important to share because it's this thing of, oh, you get knocked down, get back on, get right back on the horse, or you fall off the bike, but actually that's not the case. And sometimes you do need a minute. But the idea is, I think for me, resilience is the ability to trust that you will find a way through. And I think that comes from self-trust.
And what other strengths do you think as a leader that you have that's really helped you navigate these different, careers, I suppose?
I think adaptability is one of the main things because if we take it into, a boxing context, it's, you can train and you can do the work outside of the fight and, the build up to that and the things that you're learning along the way, but you never know what you're going to get, right? I don't know what opponent's going to show up. I don't know how they're going to show up. So I have a toolkit that I have built within my training program. However, I have to be flexible and have the ability to adapt on the fight night. And so if you take that out of a boxing context and into real life, it's really just about adding to your toolkit, really having as many resources and tools to adapt to any possible situation. And so that, comes from, feedback, conversations, the ability to ask questions, the ability to listen, to challenge yourself. I think that's a huge thing. I think when we're comfortable, there's no growth. And so the ability to grow then helps create that experience and resilience that then creates your toolkit.
I think there's something so sort of finite and about you win or lose a fight. So when you lose, your head can't go down and then, because you have to learn from that, don't you? To then go on and win the next one. So I guess you have to be more responsive to feedback to be able to understand what could have been done differently. Whereas as a leader, it's not quite so clear, isn't it, when you've won and you've lost?
Yeah, but I think it's okay to lose.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. If I didn't lose my first fight, I wouldn't have gone on to learn all the lessons that would then push me on to win. And I think we shouldn't be scared of losing as long as we're prepared to learn. And on top of that, I think there has to be risk.
Yeah, I agree.
There has to be risk.
And what I find actually is we coach many, many women, and without stereotyping too much, but I have definitely noticed a greater um, potential or a greater propensity to perfectionism. So wanting to get everything absolutely right before taking a risk. And so I wonder how that translates into the boxing ring.
There's no time for perfectionism. Like, it's very present. And there's a level of trust. It's trust that your training has been enough in order to show up for the fight. We have a saying which is train hard, fight easy. And so the idea is that you put it in and the preparation is there before you step in. So it doesn't matter who you're facing, you've already put the work in and you have your toolkit, right, to draw on. And I think it's just, don't get comfortable. Risk is where growth happens. And of course, people have different levels of what feels comfortable to them, but there's no growth without risk. I mean, every time you step into the ring, it's, getting punched in the face is a risk. It's a risk. So, but take that outside of that. I'm not telling everybody to step in the ring and get punched in the face. But I am saying do something that feels challenging and scary and brave, because on the other side of that is growth.
I totally agree. I feel that you're not learning unless you're taking those kind of risks.
Yeah.
But it's quite, in today's corporate world, it's quite scary to take risks. So a lot of people feel that they're quite trammeled in and worry about taking risks. Yeah. So, but actually you don't grow unless you do actually try it out.
Also, there's a huge amount of energy spent worrying about things that haven't materialized. And so again, if I bring it back to boxing, a huge part of being successful is being able to visualize your outcome. And so if I'm visualizing an outcome that is based on fear and worry, then that is likely to be the outcome I'm going to get. If I'm visualizing my hand going up and having a gold medal around my neck, that's the outcome I'm going to get, which is literally what happened.
Is that what you did?
It's literally what happened.
You could just see it.
I saw it. I not just see it, you feel it. So I feel how the crowd is going to sound. I feel how it's going to feel when my arm goes up, how my opponent may feel, how I may feel standing there. It's really about connecting that thought with an actual feeling, because that brings you closer to the reality. But I didn't have words for it, right? I didn't have a name for that. I'm 20 something and I didn't know, that's the process of visualization. But we've all done it as a kid. We're really good at it. We just use our imaginations.
Yeah.
But what we don't realize is actually it's a powerful tool of creation. How does anything happen? Who decided to build a table? It came from a thought, or this podcast, it came from a thought first, but that's where it begins. And I think we have to lean into that more.
I agree. So I want to ask you a little bit about the climate that we're in at the moment with regards to gender equity, if you like, and more generally. So there's a hell of a lot since that Louis Theroux documentary about the men of the manosphere. There's a lot about men, and I've noticed when I've talked about Fight Forward, it's amazing how many people quickly say, you do know men are subject to violence at home as well. Statistically, what is that like? Because it's true, isn't it? I think it's coercive control and other forms of abuse. It's not just women, is it?
I think it's whenever we have a conversation about one specific group of people, then it opens up the floor for those not involved or that it doesn't apply to say, hey, what about us? But we're dealing with a majority, right? And so by me speaking or by women talking about the issues that impact us, that is not to cancel out or minimize the experience of men who unfortunately do experience this. I think it's 1 in 7 people experience domestic abuse. So that covers men as well. And so I don't think, solving this problem isn't in an isolation, first of all. I think it absolutely requires men to be a part of the conversation. If we're speaking about this manosphere stuff, I think what's unfortunate is that there is, this generation of men who are feeling that they need to reclaim something. And I think that's really sad. And I think I'll say something controversial. I think, unfortunately, it's unhealed women who are raising these men, raising boys to become these men. And so the cycle continues. The reality is that 50% of children raised in abusive households are either likely to be perpetrators or victims.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Yeah. So the idea is that how can we create women who are healed and, able to raise boys who are not becoming
because
these men.
You're just saying what happens is it just continues on
Well,
and
it's
on.
generational. And, again, if unfortunately we know there's plenty of statistics around, if you're seeing as children, we copy or we mirror or we lean towards the thing that feels familiar. So if you're either not doing and repeating those abusive behaviors, you're seeking out people who do, because that's what you know and understand.
Yeah.
And so, the cycle continues and we have to break that narrative. I think it happens with powerful storytelling. I think it happens with, showing women triumphing over trauma so that their story isn't focused around the awful things that have happened, but actually the amazing things that they've done to overcome that. I think that's hugely inspiring and much more effective than dire statistics that people are feeling desensitized to.
Yeah. And Pillow allows people to tell their story. Is that right? Is that the idea?
Yes. So as we're building, we have our website where women can have an opportunity to drop their baggage. So, carrying stories or experiences where they don't feel seen or heard, it gives them an opportunity to anonymously share their experience with no recourse. So no judgment, no legal recourse in terms of if they say something, it can be used against them.
Because it's entirely anonymous.
It's entirely anonymous, a safe, secure platform. You have the choice to continue the journey and join the wait list for when we launch Pillow, or you can leave it there and just have your story shared. And it stays there. We don't post it. We don't do anything other than, add it to the list of women, who have shared
their story.
Yeah.
And so presumably men could leave their story as well. Is that the idea?
I think we haven't made that clear. And of course, if they felt compelled to, absolutely. Yeah. At the moment, it's not an exclusion of men. It's about creating a space for women where they can feel seen and heard.
Yeah.
Or those who identify as women. I think that's important to say as well, where they can be seen and heard. And, as this grows, then the view or the vision is to support all people who need it. But right now, women need it. You've heard the shocking statistics, and actually this is where it starts.
Well, thank you very much, Lesley. It's been great to see you again. And thank you for sharing with us what you're doing with Fight Forward and indeed with Pillow.
Thank you. It was a European gold. And so I'll be very honest, at this point, I'd only had 6 fights, something like that. And I was selected to go and compete in this competition. But it was with European female boxers who, at that stage, European female boxing was 10 years older. And so these women had 80, 90, 100 fights. And so my main objective, this is like full imposter syndrome, was not to embarrass myself, like to show up and not look like I shouldn't be there. That was my main objective. I didn't even think about winning gold medals. And so I got there, and the first fight was with this former champion Swedish girl who it was a tough fight. It was really close, and they had to kind of look back and count the points to see who won. And I just about got it. And I was like, amazing. It's a tournament. So you're boxing like 2, 3, 4 times over 3, 4 days. And so I was so happy that I was like, oh my God, I haven't done anything to embarrass myself. I got at the very least, I've got a bronze medal. And so I rang my coach, Mr. A, and was like, Mr. A, I've got a bronze. And he was like, he swore at me. He was like, I'll keep it clean for the sake of the podcast. But he was like, what the hell? Like, go back in there and get silver. And so I had my next fight and thought, right, okay, fine. A little bit kind of deflated that I was like, I've done amazing, but no problem. He said silver, so I'll get silver. And so I had that fight, another tough opponent, but I knocked her down. That was like my first ever knockdown. And so I was growing in confidence and I won that. And so I definitely secured silver. And I was like, this is enough to say, like, okay, you've done well. You know, what happens after this? And again, he was like, what the hell? Like, go and get gold. And he said, I'm coming up. So he arranged, this was in Liverpool, the championships were in Liverpool. And he'd arranged for the whole gym to kind of get this bus up and cheer me on. I was really nervous because now the pressure is on. And it wasn't I didn't care, but I'd achieved my goal of not looking ordinary. And so here I am, finals, tough opponent, French boxer, very well established. And I had a bit of the flu as well. So I was like, oh my God, I'm sick. And I couldn't train that day. So I literally spent the day in bed, like shivering and just, thinking about what next. And so I started thinking about the fight, how I wanted it to go. I think it was just 24 hours of just, it's all I could think about, because people were coming up to support me. I want to step in the ring. And now I've got this far. Maybe I've got a chance. I knocked the other girl down. So all of these things. And so I got to the fight and it was like an out of body experience. I felt like I was looking down on my body and I was watching myself box. And it was the first time that I enjoyed it, if that makes sense. In boxing, they're like, just enjoy it. And I was always like, what do you mean enjoy it? There's so much kind of to think about. But after that kind of point, I really understood about, you've done all the work and you've shown up and actually just enjoy it. And it's like this concept of flow state, right? And that's what I was experiencing. And it was just amazing. I heard the crowd. I felt kind of like, it was like I was moving in slow motion and I wanted it. Like I felt like I wanted it. And so from going from someone who turned up and didn't want to embarrass myself to then moving on to being someone who not only deserved to be there, but actually believed that I could, it was like a kind of transformational experience that laid the foundation for the rest of my life, truly, in terms of understanding what I'm capable of and how to reset your mind when things are challenging and how you choose to show up. So, and I won. So.